Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I am particularly sensitive to the problem of selective declassification because I had to go through being on the receiving end of a lot of selective declassification during the Intelligence Committee's investigation of the torture program. And I will tell you, it is extremely frustrating to have information declassified, in that case out of the White House, that you know can be exploded, completely blown up by other information, but that other information hasn't been declassified, so you can't answer the false implication from selectively declassified information. So from that background, I am really concerned that we are treating this Ratcliffe letter as something at all serious or credible. And Mr. Chairman, I hope very much that nobody from this committee had any hand in generating this letter. We are recipients only, I hope, because if we had any hand in this, that's a real problem. I will point out that with respect to allegation, bullet 1, talking about tying Trump to Putin and the Russians hacking of the Democratic National Committee, that's actually an established fact. With respect to the point about a proposal from a foreign policy advisor claiming interference by Russian security services, that is an established fact. And the US presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering US elections is also an established fact. So what else you have around here is what looks like just something that got spun up by a political appointee and is now being offered through this committee as having any credibility. And I think that this rings just innumerable bells about the dangers of selective declassification. So there's topic 1. I've got a problem with selective declassification in our proceedings here. Second, I've got a big problem with access to documents. You and I have talked about this. You know that I've made public statements about how the FBI appears to have had a policy, for damn sure a pattern, of refusing to answer questions, refusing to answer QFRs. And many cases to Republican senators, but for sure to Democrat senators. You took that claim seriously enough that you organized a meeting for me with the Deputy Attorney General to explain this policy or this pattern of not answering questions. That was on June 15th, as I recall. And here we are nearly into October. And you know how many answers I've gotten since that meeting? 0, none, not a single one. So when it comes to our questions, it looks like it's a total stonewall. In this case, on this matter, the DOJ has given the chairman unprecedented access to information, including deliberative documents, stuff that they wouldn't give us even if they were answering our questions, and classified information, which usually is a mare's nest to get through. 18 separate productions of highly sensitive documents totaling 1,550 pages. So this particular question seems to be getting high-speed special treatment out of the DOJ when in other areas we get a complete wall of silence and shutdown. And the last is, I'm told that there were even private briefings to Republicans only on this matter in which Democrats were not invited to participate. Again, if that is true, a combination of selective declassification, dishonorable and unfair access to documents, and partisan private briefings does not get us off to a good start, going back to my letter to you of June 4th about the hazards of this investigation. So I just needed to say that. I agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that it is worth looking into the question of what is wrong with the FISA process that allowed these repeated errors to happen across a whole array of cases. But it's also interesting to read the Gleason brief, where a retired federal judge, on behalf of a federal judge, accused the Department of Justice under Attorney General Barr of running political errands for the president in order to protect a political supporter and friend of his, Mr. Flynn. And we have exactly 0 attention being paid to that. That is a fairly serious matter of interest, I think equivalent to the matter of interest in FISA, but nothing. The current FBI director is talking about present Russian interference in this election right now as we speak to try to get President Trump reelected. Where's the hearing on that? Where are the documents on that? Where's the declassified material on that? None of it. And, I'll go back to what I considered, because I don't have any information, because the FBI has given me none, what appears to have been a bogus tip line in the Kavanaugh investigation. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but a question about whether that was a bogus tip line, I think, is something that is worth answering. And yes, it is important that the FISA process was abused, but if an FBI investigation was abused in the Kavanaugh hearings, that's also an important matter. So I don't want to deprecate the importance of what we're doing here, but I do think it stands in a very sharp contrast to other issues with the FBI that are continually swept under the rug and continually stonewalled. The question that I have is something I've raised before, and I'll ask Director Comey, because he's done a lot of investigations. You and I have done investigations as well, Chairman. You've been a prosecutor. If you have an investigation, and if you determine in your oversight as a supervisor that there is a flaw or an omission or a false statement in a warrant application, obviously, you should not file that warrant application with the court. The problem is that the committee's questions on the Republican side have always ended there. You would not sign the warrant if you knew that was the case. The problem with that is that you then go on to the next step, and that is, just because there was a flaw in a proposed warrant doesn't mean you end the investigation. You're nodding your head. We both agree. At the end of the day, what you then do is you go back and you look at whether the investigation was otherwise predicated with all the falsity or whatever removed and everything accurate that needs to be in there done. And if then the investigation was otherwise predicated, and if then there was otherwise probable cause to continue, Director Comey, do you not then proceed with the investigation with a cleaned up warrant rather than let somebody get off scot-free because of an error that never reached the court?
You'd certainly want to go through, I think that's called the Franks process, to understand whether you still have sufficient basis to establish probable cause with the mistakes and omissions corrected.
And that is standard FBI practice, correct?
Standard prosecutorial investigative practice across
the board. Thank you.
Hey, respond and turn it over to Senator Cruz. Number one, Senator Whitehouse has reason to be concerned about some testimony given in the House by a Department of Justice official about environmental policy. And we will keep plugging away with me and you and Senator Lee because this is a legitimate inquiry.
Just to be clear, Chairman, yes, I'm very concerned about the antitrust investigation and who was behind it and why it seemed to violate so many rules and norms. And when we get around to Senator Lee and Senator Klobuchar's antitrust investigation, which was supposed to be today but has been, I gather, indefinitely postponed, I would hope that we have those documents. But the list that I gave to the Deputy Attorney General of all of the QFRs that I've not had answers to and of all of the questions and letters I've not had answers to goes well beyond that one issue of the Del Rahim investigation of fake investigation, and it would seem, but we'll see, of the auto companies.
Yeah. And just to make it clear to the public at large, because the Carter Page warrant application was incredibly flawed, doesn't mean you can't look at other things. The question for me has always been, okay, let's look at all things Trump. And the dossier, they accused Carter Page as having a relationship with Manafort, and that's where he's passing all this information. Carter Page never talked to Manafort. That's things that the court should know, allegations being made. We now know that the dossier was a result, at least in part, of Russian disinformation, that the FBI took Russian disinformation from a political party, paid for by a political party, and got a warrant against an American citizen, and that's pretty stunning. And we got to do something. Somebody needs to go to jail or get fired over that. Now, the question has always been, did the FBI have the same zeal looking at Trump? Let's put it this way. Everything Trump got looked at. People's lives were turned upside down. $25 million was spent, and nobody's ever been charged with colluding with the Russians on the Trump side. Were there Was there any suggestion maybe the other side was involved in trying to create a Russian-Trump problem for political purposes? We know that Christopher Steele was on the payroll of the Democratic Party. We know that he was working for Fusion GPS. We know that his primary subsource was Igor, the Russian spy. If they were willing to do that, would they be willing to do more? We know in July there's an intercept out there from Russian intelligence analysts that the Clinton campaign is concocting a strategy to tie Trump to Russia. All I'm suggesting is, did they look at that? And Director Comey has told me he doesn't remember getting an inquiry from the intelligence community about a September concern about the Clinton campaign trying to change the subject from the server to Trump Russia. He doesn't remember that. So what kind of system do we have? We look at all things Trump all the time, and when we get exculpatory evidence, we keep looking. When we told it's not reliable, we keep using it. And when there's suggestions that the other side may be up to no good, we just ignore it. That's why the Radcliffe information is important to me. I haven't been privately briefed by anybody, but I'm beginning to understand there was a two-tiered system here. When it came to Trump, there were no rules. Plow ahead, ignore everything, lie if you need to, alter documents. When it came to Clinton, seems to be a completely different standard, knowing that the campaign had on its payroll a foreign agent who hired a Russian spy to get dirt on Trump. That is the concern I have, and we can't live in a world where you turn the world upside down against one campaign and give the other campaign pretty much a complete pass regarding Russia.
Mr. Chairman, since you've responded to me, may I have a moment back to you?
Yes, you may.
I'll be brief. The only thing I will say is that if you look at the Radcliffe letter, the only thing that it really says is that if it's to be believed at all, there was a plan within the Clinton campaign to point out that Trump and the Russians were scheming in the election, or the Trump campaign and the Russians were scheming in the election.
Okay, great.
So that predicated fact seems actually to be established truth if you believe the SSCI report and if you believe what Director Wray is saying right now and what the FBI has said all along. So it's really hard to call a campaign's effort to blow the whistle on the other side's communications with Russia and Russia's efforts to support that candidate with the actual efforts to do that. I mean, they're not the same thing.
Thank you. I have a completely different view of what this...
Okay, but you had a chance to say yours. You gave me the
no, that's
same
fair.
one, and I'm grateful to
It's
you.
all fair.
I'll yield back, and I thank you for that courtesy.
All I know is that the CIA felt Obama needed to know about this, and I take it completely different that this was an effort by the Clinton campaign to tie Trump to Russia, not because of anything they found, because that was part of their political strategy. Senator Lee, you want to say something?
Yeah, since the antitrust subcommittee was brought up, I just wanted to respond to that point. As you know, Senator Whitehouse, we had originally scheduled the oversight hearing for today. Because of this conflict with this hearing today, that couldn't occur. I've been in constant contact with Assistant Attorney General Macon Delrahim, who is an outstanding lawyer, one that I've known for 20 years and who I trust. Now, I know you and I perhaps see that differently. Macon Delrahim is eager, not only willing, but eager to come and testify and to set the record straight again on these issues. He has, in fact, responded to your letter. I don't know whether you've read that response yet or not. He also told me last night, I believe there are more documents that he's either just sent you or about to send you. I'd like to know, instead of just smearing him by saying that he's being evasive, tell me what questions you've asked that he hasn't answered. To my knowledge, he has responded to you. You may not like his responses, but
I'll get you the list.
Please do.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Could we? Yeah. Well, we'll resolve this.
I gave a list to the chairman some time ago, and I
support
assumed that would be
Whitehouse's
passed on to
efforts
you. I think it's
this
important that we do this, and I don't want to be in a situation in which he comes in and I don't have the chance to do the preparation for a meaningful hearing.
Yeah, I totally get that.